Hello and welcome everyone to the live hangout tonight. This is just kind of a casual live, like I have my special guest with me. If you don't know who I am, my name is Jasmine. I'm a witchy content creator here on YouTube. I do this, that, and the third, whatever. I have a lovely guest with me though. She's been on the channel before. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Teia Kennedy, and yeah, I'm here to hang out with Jasmine. I like to keep it casual. She's like, "Do you want to do a topic?" And I'm like, "Could we just like hang out?"
I'm so down for a hangout. I'm so down
Yeah,
for a hangout.
I gotta keep things casual. I gotta be able to like roll with the punches.
Yeah, and like I have to be type A in so many other parts of my life that it's kind of nice to be a little type B sometimes, like on the
Yeah,
YouTubes, you know? So
I mean, I totally have a list of questions that we can answer,
right, but it's not
but
like we have like
still,
an official topic.
it's just like a framework that we can play
Yeah,
with.
yeah, I'm down for a framework. And we are both engaging in some adult libations on this evening. Where I am, it's incredibly rainy. We have like essentially like a not like a tsunami, but like a crazy monsoon rainstorm. So that's fun. I have
Cool.
these headphones in. So like there's been multiple times before we were live where I was like, is that my drink fizzing or is that rain? Like, it's very, very rainy.
Oh,
So I am drinking like
yeah.
a spicy coffee. So this is just straight up black coffee. I like my coffee, like I like my witchcraft. No, I'm kidding. It's just coffee with some adult additives of a variety in it.
And you guys hear how clueless I am. I'm like, "Oh, did you put cinnamon in your coffee?"
And I was like, no, it's liquor.
I'm like,
Liquor.
"Oh,
And I have like all these fun stickers on my cup.
oh, I
You know what I
love
mean?
those." Okay, I want a cup like that. That would make me feel super witchy.
Well, I just got like, so all of this is from Amazon. Okay. Mr. Bezos keeps me in check. This is just like a pink tumbler. And then I bought like a bulk pack for like $5 of like 500.
Really?
I think it was called like Gothic Witchy Alternative
Yeah.
Stickers. And
Yeah.
it's like I got like 500 of them. And yeah, it's cute. It's really good to take into the office and to work. You know what I mean? So, and you are having.
I am having a dark and stormy, which is a drink out of Bermuda, and it is made with Gosling's Black Seal rum and Barrett's ginger beer. It's very particular. It's very niche, but
Which I
my
have
heart
to try
belongs to
this.
it.
Yes, I have to try this. I love ginger beer. Love ginger beer.
You know
So
what?
any
I
sort
don't
of
like ginger
recipes.
beer.
Really? I'll drink ginger
But
beer
I
straight.
like Barrett's ginger beer. But I've never found a ginger beer that tastes anything like Barrett's.
I don't know if I've ever
It
had
tastes totally
Barrett's.
different. Yeah, it tastes totally different than I've tried, like, because I came home and I wanted this drink and I had the Black Seal rum, but I didn't have the ginger beer because I'm like, oh, you can get ginger beer, right? And I'm like, oh, well, you can't get this kind, but whatever. My husband and I tried like every ginger beer from like every store we could find, and none of them tasted right. They were all wrong.
Hmm.
It's very particular. But yeah, dark and
So
stormy.
Barrett's ginger beer with what kind of rum?
It's by a company called Gosling's, and it's their Black Seal rum. And there's literally a picture of a black seal on the bottom. There's like a maroon cap, and yeah, Black Seal rum. And it has like the rum has like a kind of a cherry flavor to it. Really good.
That does sound really good. We were talking about adult beverages behind the scenes. This is why we're talking about this now. Because when I was talking to Teia, I was like, you know what? Like, let's do a hangout. Let's like get a bev. We call it a bev, like a beverage, like a bev. Let's get a bev. Let's have a cocktail. Let's spill tea. Let's kiki, if you will. And
I'm down with that now.
yeah, yeah.
I'm learning.
And so we just got this Costco membership and never been a Costco person before. But I have a Costco membership now. For whatever reason, my partner decided we needed the executive black card level I don't know why, but cool. I guess we get 2% back at the end of the year. That's
That's what we
fun.
have. Yep.
Yeah, that's fun. Went to Costco for like the second time in my entire life last Sunday. Um, Apparently in Canada, they don't do this, which I found interesting. We talked about this behind the scenes too, but the wine selection at our Costco here in the States is incredible. Like I was like really taken back, like the amount of wine. And I got this really
I
cool
love
wine
it.
called Six Sense, which is like a chocolate cherry tobacco fig flavored wine. I've never had a tobacco flavoring in wine.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I thought so too. And I have like, so, spring for me is like kind of hard. This week in particular is kind of hard because it's my mother's veil crossing week, which is always just like, ugh, for me. And we have some Coven family photos like planned for April 2nd. And we're all going to dress up in like cute black clothes. And we're going to go out to this big cemetery called Crown Hill Cemetery, which is like the largest cemetery in the state capital in all 50 states. And we're going to have a cute charcuterie picnic. And I'm going to have that Six Sense wine. And we're going to be hot. And we're going to take pictures. And it's going to be like beautifully like morbid and like poetic and like celebrating death and life and being
Seriously, all your
edgelords.
stuff you make me want to be part of a coven.
I mean, there are good covens out there. There are a lot of very toxic groups. Of course, there are a lot of problematic behavior that can be propagated, and a coven is not and should not be a cult. And I think that's where things sometimes go left is like, I think some witches who have engaged with a wider community, regardless of where you're located, like I think you're going to have a mix of experiences. I've been invited to groups that I am not initiated to, and they've been amazing, and I've had a great time. And I've also been to open rituals that I've been invited to where I felt like I was being poached or I felt like I was being sold something.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never been part of a coven. I've always been a solitary, but I just recently started a guild, a local witchcrafters guild here in Edmonton.
Tell us about that for those who might not know it from my channel.
So basically I started, it's a guild. I mean, anybody from anywhere in the world can join. If you're interested, come join us. But basically I teach through there. And I'm right now in the process of working with a couple other people who are interested in teaching through there, because it shouldn't just be, like you said, the cult of Teia, right? It shouldn't just be all about me. It should be about a community of people who all give back and all build and grow together. But really, it's about community outreach and creating a community for witches like us in Edmonton. Because it's very Wiccan here. There's a lot of Wiccan groups, which is great, but that's not my jam, right? It just doesn't really fit with what I want to do. So I thought, well, let's make something. And and hopefully in a couple of months, within the next couple of months, I'm going to offer a mentoring program for the tradition that I'm learning right now. And who knows, maybe one day that will turn into a little coven of its own.
Yeah, that would be super cool. That would be super cool. I think like when our coven first started, our coven was, we called it a circle, but I think language is like really powerful because like what one person might consider to be a coven and what the next person might consider could be very, very different. And so that's one thing about like people locally, because our coven is a very local based coven. We don't really have anything going on online at this time. And like, so we have folks who will be invited to things. And sometimes if certain things are met and done, then they can petition as in like they can kind of apply. And there's a process of that we kind of do. But before any of that was a thing, it was literally me. And I had a client of mine, a reading client who had become a friend of mine. And I had an old friend of mine who was interested in witchcraft. And this was back in 2016, I believe. I had left a coven that I was in prior to, and I had been solitary for a year and then it was around Samhain, and I remember feeling so like kind of alone on Samhain because the year before I was totally by myself, not in a coven, anything. And it was like the first year that my mother had passed and I was totally alone. And I thought that's what I wanted. And I think it was what I needed at that time to really like take that time to be totally disconnected and alone and everything. And the previous coven I was in, I'm not going to name names or anything like that, but it was very culty. It became very, very culty. It became very toxic. And I recognized it was not a place for me. So I left. And you should be able to leave. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the difference. If you can't get out, you have a problem.
Yeah. And so I had invited this client of mine who I had read for, who just kind of became a close friend who was interested in witchcraft. And I invited an old friend of mine who we had reconnected and they were interested in witchcraft. And I was like, I'm going to host like a little Samhain ritual if you guys want to come, blah, blah, blah. That became more like a circle where we were getting together for other things. And then that essentially slowly over time evolved to more than just the three of us. And to now it's like a neo traditional coven, I would say, like a neo tradition. But even like still, like with the word coven, like I think people have different impressions of that word. Like some people think coven is literally the equivalent of just like a Sabbath or a gathering of witches. And that's all a coven is. Some people think a coven is a group of people who drink wine and hang out under the full moon with a bonfire, which is so dope. And I'm down for that too.
Yeah.
Our definition of coven is more, I would say, ceremonial than that, than
More
just
formal.
More formal. But I think that that's part of why petitioning processes are so important. And it's cool to have people come to some of our open rituals because that's how you kind of get to know people. And for our coven and for us, we are kind of like more like a magical family. We're more familial than we are like a business, or because there are some covens that are just like shops basically, and everyone who works at the shop is in this group. I don't know, coven, that could be like a whole topic in of itself, really.
Yeah, I've noticed that even like in different groups and stuff, you get when you get a group of people together, somebody's expectations are never met. And I find it's usually, I found in the past, it's always been the person who wants more. You know, we need to be a family. We need to like be together all the time. And it's like, whoa, 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 right? Like,
yeah,
there's a purpose to our gathering, right? We are here to do ritual together, or we are here to do spell work together, or we are here to hang out by the bonfire on full moons together. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to spend every weekend together. Yeah. That's what I tend to find is there's people that want so much more, and it's like you kind of got to put the brakes on a little bit and break some hearts. And
yeah, there's some people I think too who are looking for more just family, and it's really sad. I mean, it's really sad. There are some people who are looking for just more family. There are some people who are looking for more of a sense of just community. Like maybe they're not really that involved in their own personal practice and they're just interested in hanging out with or talking about like armchair witchery as opposed to like, let's go do it together.
Do it. Yeah. They don't necessarily want to do the work, but they want to reap all the benefits.
Yeah. And
I want to be part of your group, and I want to have all the friendships, and I want to have all the closeness, but I don't want to actually like do all the work.
Right. I don't want to actually do like witchcraft.
Like you want me to study?
Yeah.
I do.
One thing that's been really beneficial for our coven and that's really worked well for us and maybe could help other groups if there's anyone watching who is maybe interested in starting a group of your own, is we are completely closed in the sense that like we don't just host open stuff all the time. The only time that we do host open stuff, and when I say open, I'm not necessarily saying public. Public means anyone and everyone is welcome. Bring your mom and them, your cousin, you know, your granny, whoever, your plus one from work, your husband, whoever. That's more what public is. And public would be more like if we were to do a ritual at our pagan pride festival or something. Like that's kind of more like public, like people could just literally walk up into your ritual. Open is like, okay, it's not necessarily open to just anyone, but it's open by invitation only, no plus ones. So like we've done more open style things only during the light half of the year, and we do it in this wooded area, this woodland that's not too far from the rest of us. And so people will come there with a specific invitation on a specific day. And then members of our coven who are appointed to do this particular thing will hang out and wait for them. And then we'll bring them to the rest of the coven in the woods. So no one really knows where we meet up. We also meet up in multiple different locations in these woods, so it's not the same. And like, we do observe the Sabbats, even though we don't necessarily identify as Wiccan per se, but typically during from like Imbolc to Litha. So sometimes we might have an open thing at Litha. Otherwise, we definitely have one for Ostara, Beltane, and Litha. And if someone comes to all three of those, so 3 wheel turns minimum, they come to our rituals, we kind of mix and mingle. We see how they are, they kind of see how we are. Then we'll have a conversation, because a petitioning really should go both ways. It's not just you trying to get accepted by a coven. It should also be you really asking questions and observing and kind of vetting whatever group you're against.
Not just are you a good fit for us, but are we a good fit for you?
Yeah. And then once that is done, then the actual like form or petitioning starts. We just kind of call that pre-stage, like the courting for the solar court. We court, you know? And so we circle and we hang out. And, you know, after that, the petitioning process is done where a formal request is sent in per instructions. If those instructions are followed properly, read the instructions properly, then that is submitted and it's overlooked, not just by me as the high priestess of this coven, but our entire coven overlooks this. Cards are pulled, spirits are talked to, natal charts are ran, synastry charts are done. We assess the stars and the spirits. We get back to the petitioner, and then we have a conversation of pros, cons, and then what I like to call expectations, right? Yeah. But also boundaries, because those are 2 separate things. So an expectation might be, for an outer court member, you are required to do this, this, and this. Are you comfortable with that? Right? Also, boundaries. As a coven, we as a collective do this, this, and this. Are you comfortable with doing that with us? If any of that is a no, then we kind of can't go farther. And you need to be honest with us, just like we're being honest with you, right?
Yeah, because once you get in, if you start going, well, like, oh, but I can't do that, it's like, well, no, then you need to go. Like,
right, you already agreed to this. You already signed. You already signed your name in the black book. You already said you were going to do this. And another thing too is you should always be able to leave a coven, but something that we have done in our neo tradition that we have found works really well for us to kind of keep a sense of respect for our neo tradition, for our time, for our energy, for our magical kinship, is there's a time and place, and there's a right and a wrong way to kind of come in and go. You're not going to come in and initiate and then the next day just like leave. Otherwise, you should have never initiated to begin with.
Yeah.
And we've never had that, because if that was the case, they probably wouldn't make it through the initiation if they're not that serious.
Yeah.
So there's certain times of year per our Sabbats where people cord cut, and they also petition to enter and they petition to leave. And by petition to leave, I don't mean they're asking permission to leave. I mean, they're taking a sabbatical. So they sit out for several wheel turns and then they return. And then we decide whether or not we need to host a cord cutting based off of what they need. And if they still decide, hey, I still want to do a cord cutting, then that's what we do. But that's kind of my rant about, like, I think some better ways to make sure that if you're a member of a coven, you're keeping it from turning into a cult. And if you're not a member of a coven, and if you're looking to join a group, I think those are some good insights to protect you from not joining a cult.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I like those. That's very open of you. Thank you for sharing all that, because I know sometimes people don't like to share all the little details, and those are some that's interesting, because I've never, I suppose I'm in the process right now of sort of initiating into a tradition, but it's all done through distance, so it's very different from actually doing something in person. I've never been through that, so it's kind of interesting to hear what you guys do.
Yeah, I really don't know much about like online workings and traditions and things like that. Like I feel like that's kind of the way our world is kind of moving and turning, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
I personally don't have any issue with it. I think it's completely valid. Like I know that some people are like, oh, online, whatever. So much of our world is online. There are people who meet their partners that they stay married to for years and years and years online.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with like an online group. I think it just comes down to like those nitty gritty details. And like there are things I can completely share openly about it, like what I just shared. And then there are also like when I mentioned like the this, and this, and the this, that, and that, like
Yeah.
there are other things that, you know, are kind of perceived as more fourth power that I'm not at liberty to share. But like even I've talked with the local coven here about like, okay, in keeping with fourth power, because that's important to us of keeping the mystery alive, but also how do we make sure that we're being respectful and transparent with people who might have a genuine interest. And that's why we
Mm-hmm.
don't typically really and like divulge much until they've met those 3 wheel turns and then they petition and then we open up a little bit and we're like, okay, so
Yeah.
this and this and this, so you good with that, or what's tea, like this and that.
Yeah, but I think they have to show that they're serious enough to get through those first little bits before you start
Yes.
divulging the good stuff, right?
Yes.
I know, like the tradition I'm learning, um, I'm doing my first year of study. Theoretically, it can be a 3-year study program, or it can just be a 1-year study program, depending on how far you want to go with it. But that first year, I mean, it's intense. It's like school. There's an exercise a week for 52 weeks, and I mean, I haven't completed it in 52 weeks. I'm taking extra time because it's a heavy load, and part of me is like, who would want to do this? Like, I'm kind of nuts for this stuff. And then I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's just it. That's who I want to practice with, is the other people who are nuts for this stuff, who
Mm-hmm.
are like, yeah, I could go through 52 weeks of exercises and I could like work through that stuff and, you know, celebrate those Sabbats and do those meditations and do all the work that's asked of me and learn all those things. And yeah.
I think that's really good too to help build more of like a solid footing just in general, but
Yeah.
especially like since it's a tradition.
Yeah. The biggest reason I wanted to do it is because I have been completely self-taught, from mostly reading books, reading what like blogs and websites, watching YouTube videos. You know what I mean? Like I've taught myself everything. And in that, inherently, there are going to be knowledge gaps. There's going to be something that didn't occur to me, or some little clue in something that I read that I didn't pick up on that would have led me down another rabbit hole of knowledge, of learning. And yeah, in this first year, some of it has been super repetitive where I'm like, yeah, dirt, whatever. I can sneeze that exercise out, no problem. Like I've been doing this for years. And there's been other things where I'm like, oh, oh yeah, I don't know what that is. I'm gonna have to learn something here. You know what I mean? And it's been really good for filling in those sort of knowledge gaps. And actually, the one thing I'll say that's been difficult is that because it's all done by distance, I think you would learn a lot more if you were actually celebrating those Sabbath rituals with other people,
Mm-hmm.
especially other people who were already in this tradition, right? You know what I mean? All those little things you'll pick up on without even
Mm-hmm.
necessarily needing to, like, to have seen the compass, that way they lay their compass, having seen that demonstrated time and time and time again, it's going to become secondhand a lot faster than when you're like trying to teach yourself it out of the book.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
that's
could.
part of why I wanted to start a mentoring program, because I'm like, I know not everybody is as tenacious as I might be. And so I'm hoping to add a little extra where we can work a little bit as a group and do some of that knowledge sharing, to make it a little easier for some people to
Yeah,
get through
and
that first year.
I think too, like traditions, in my opinion, should be added to. Like, and they should be growing and living
Yes.
in their own way. Like, a tradition should not stop and start with whoever made the tradition. Every person, and I think that's the beauty of witchcraft, and I think that's the beauty of covenry and neo-traditionalism, is the fact that every single member, to use our coven as an example, or any coven that might be like the one that I'm in, every single member who initiates is like adding their bit into this collective well of magic that is pulled from. And then some members, through initiations further past just the outer court, then are also creating further traditions. And like our tradition, year to year to year to year, continues to grow in its own way. And members that we've had have added to that over the years. Even members who have cord cut and left, like there are still things that are kind of ingrained into this, our own tradition, which is what now, about 5 years ish. So from what I've seen in my area, for a physical, in-person group, to me, 3 years seems to kind of be like this big curve that like most people tend to either kind of continue on and ascend or like crash and burn after 3 years, as far as like in-person groups go.
Yeah.
And I don't know necessarily why that is, but I'm thankful that we made it over that milestone of
You're
3
right, though.
years.
There's a hump where it's kind of, you've got the excitement, you're building and you're growing and you're together, you've got all that like new group energy. It's like any relationship, and then you get to that plateau where you're like, oh, we all kind of know each other now, we all know our foibles, we all know each other, we know the work kind of a little bit inside and out, it's getting a little routine. So can we stick it out, or is that when it falls apart because now everybody's not excited? And
well, and sometimes
you know what I
things
mean?
happen too. Like sometimes babies are born and that changes priorities, right? As it should
Yeah,
sometimes.
life happens.
Some
Yeah.
people get promotions, people lose their jobs, people move away, people pass. Like life happens. And so sometimes it's not always just like nasty drama and beef and so doesn't like so and so doesn't like so and so. Like sometimes it's just our paths, while they might have been in an alignment for a time, it doesn't mean that it's your whole life. And I think that that would be my biggest piece of advice for someone looking to get into any kind of group, is that like make sure that you fully understand the proper and respectful way to walk into the room, and also make sure that there is an exit, and understand the right way to walk out the door to where you're not going to upset a coven full of your former magical family members.
Yeah.
Like,
no. It's funny what you mentioned about tradition needing to change, because that is, I think, one of the misconceptions with traditional witchcraft, that it is this tradition that has been passed down through the ages, unchanging since ancient times. And it's like, no. And actually, traditions need to grow and change. And it popped into my head because we talked about Jello salad last time.
oh, yeah.
And that is, it's a family tradition that has to grow and change like Jello salad. Because if I was still making Jello salads every Christmas, just like my great great Grammy made them back in the 40s or the 50s, and they would put like hot dogs and olives in them, it would have died. We would not be making it anymore. But that recipe has grown and changed with the times to become this beautiful fresh cranberries, and it's this like tart, tangy, sweet salad that's like, oh my gosh, it's like so good. But you kind of got to change it over time. It can't always be wieners and olives in Jello, or it's going to die. And any tradition is like that. It has to change if it's going to stay current, and if it's going to stay timely, right?
No, you're absolutely right. I just cannot get over the visual
Like
of
Jello salad.
of hot dogs and olives and Jello.
Oh, they used to put the most disgusting things in Jello. They called it aspic. Look up
Oh,
aspic.
I don't know. That sounds cursed. Like,
Like some of the stuff they used to put in there was disgusting.
thank you everyone in the comments, like Australia, the Witch of Enchantment, Shane, Into the Void, Eowe,
Hi, Carolyn.
yes, Carmilla, Alondra. Who else do we have in here? Paige Otto, thanks for joining. Little Red, Carolyn, yeah.
Carolyn's in my guild.
Oh, sweet. Hi, Carolyn.
Yeah.
Red Cap, hey. So what are some of the questions that like you have? I guess we should actually get to that since, you know, you made them. We kind of fell into this like discussion of covenry, but I feel like that should, let's save some more of like pros and cons of magical groups and red flags to look out for a future episode. Let's do that.
Uh-huh.
That'd be fun.
Okay. So, is there anything in your craft, in your personal practice that would like shock somebody?
I mean, I think I'm shocking just as is. I mean, yeah, I think that I'm a very flamboyant, obnoxious, over the top person. So I think that I'm shocking in that way. Practice wise, like I think some people would find maybe like some of the blood magic or the necromancy shocking. I think maybe some people would find the fact that like I myself as a solitary practitioner and I myself leading the coven and rituals, we've done full on ceremonial like rituals before at like a public park with like people with their kids on the swings before. We've just been at a park and just like done LBRP. Like,
nice.
They think we're LARPing. They don't know.
Yeah.
And they don't care. They really don't. Like if we're not bothering them, you know, and we're not trying to bring their children in, like it's cool, you know.
Candies for the kiddies.
I find that like with a lot of American witches that I talk to, because America is like such like an ethnic melting pot because we have so much immigration of various all over the world. You know, there's not a lot of content creators who really talk about Sahir or like Arabian conjure. So I think some of the feedback that I get from either other content creators or people viewing my content is like, what the hell is that? Or like, why is there a Quran on your witch's altar? What is that? Or like, I get a lot of questions about like a bakor, which is just a way to burn oud, which is a type of incense. Like I get a lot of people who are like, oh, what's that? It's a bakor. Oh, what's that? It's a bakor. Oh, what is that? It looks so exotic. It's just a thing that you light incense on. Like that's literally it. I think some people find the use of animal parts shocking. I mean, none of this is shocking to me and maybe not to you. I don't know.
No.
I don't know how to answer that. Like, is there anything in my craft that I think other people would find shocking? I don't know. What would you say?
No, and the reason I ask is because when I really sit down and I look at my practice, I'm like, I don't think there's anything that people would actually find all that shocking. I think that my practice is very mundane. It's just really, now, you're right. Like, you know, sometimes I use animal bones and people might be a little like, oh my God about that, right? I have death oil sitting over on my bookshelf. People might be like, oh my God about that. But really, I think if you were to come and like live a day in my shoes, I think you would really be like, oh. Like I had a friend call me, because I've always been sort of public about being a witch, but not until I ended my last business endeavor did I really like say, okay, that's it. I'm starting a YouTube channel. I'm like starting a guild. I'm totally like no holds barred. I'm talking about it on the Facebook. I'm talking about it on the Instagram. I really don't care what people think anymore. And I had somebody from my like previous business like called me, and she was really like, she's like, so you're teaching witchcraft now? And I'm like, yeah, totally. Do you have questions about that? She's like, well, yeah, that's why I'm calling. What is that? Bless her heart for being brave enough to call and ask. And she was just like, I don't understand. Like, what do you do? And we had a little chat about it. And afterwards she's like, oh, that's really not that different. And I'm like, no, it's really not.
I mean, I think what would probably be the most shocking is like when I get other practitioners who are either content creators or they're not content creators. And like sometimes I get like a shocked reaction based off of things that I post and upload of being like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe you're sharing that, or oh my gosh, I can't believe you're saying that, or you really posted that, or like, you know, but also the fourth power is also different for every witch. And I think that some people forget that everything that you see on the internet is placed in front of you for a very meticulous reason. And I think that as witches, social media and the digital worlds can be very powerful tools to weave with and to build impressions and glamours in order to influence the subconscious minds of the people watching our content, for better or
Yeah.
worse. Even if you're not intentionally doing so, you are. Like, you're affecting the minds of others based off of the media that you're putting out.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
you know, for better or worse. And there are times where, you know, I've put like a big one, right? It's like, oh, you should not, you know, post active spell work on social media. And like, I think that that's a good general rule of thumb per se, but I also have found really, really good results with like doing a whole ritual and like a whole spell work and recording it and editing it and then posting it with like a transparent sigil layered throughout the video that goes real quick to where maybe they won't be able to see it, with the intention that every single person who watches the video is feeding it with their energy. And I think that that's something to some practitioners, especially practitioners who haven't necessarily had the internet be so ingrained in them. Because like I am the last generation that has grown up before internet was in the home. Like there are no more generations.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people growing up without internet. I'm not saying that. Don't twist my words, YouTube. I know how people are. But like I'm saying like as a collective,
Mm-hmm. Generally
median
speaking,
range,
in North America, like,
yes, most people are having access.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think we talked about that last time a little bit after the live had ended. I remember, I think we talked about it, and you were saying about that idea that when you post it, all the people who interact with it, who view it and like it and share it, are all lending energy into that working. And I thought that was a really interesting way of looking at it. You know, because you hear that, oh, don't show your active spell work. And I'm like, why? Because everybody's sitting out there just waiting to like cast a counter spell to think. Like, I'm like, no.
I think some people are just
trolling the internet, looking where I can mess up someone's magic.
I think some people are so self-absorbed and they genuinely think that like if they post their stuff, someone is going to give a shit enough to go out of their way to try to interact with it. And I do think that that's possible. Yeah. And I do think that it's a case-by-case basis. And so I think the general rule of thumb being, hey, maybe there are some things that you should keep private and sacred and like sacred and shrouded. I think that's a good idea, you know? Mm-hmm. Especially like if you're posting something that could potentially be perceived as more baneful. And if anything, like maybe it's not a good idea, right? To like post a video of like putting your boss in a jar if your boss is your friend on Facebook. Maybe that's not the best idea. Like there are, you know, some general rules of thumb, but they're mostly, I feel like, common sense. And I also think that tech witchery and the digital realm is just as real and as valid to me as those traditional witchcraft concepts of like the upper world. Like,
and again, we as a tradition, we need to grow and evolve. And I think that's sort of the next frontier is like this digital world that we're all starting to tap into. And how do you use that for your witchcraft?
And think about how we're all contributing to this, and think like, how crazy will it be if in 50 years people are still using YouTube? Like this will be like one hell of a grimoire. Our individual channels, or even Facebook will be like, hey, want to be really embarrassed about what you posted 5 years ago? Like we're building this digital grimoire just by being content creators, and we're adding to the, I feel like, the collective witch consciousness. And I'm sure some of the stuff that we're talking about and doing in 50 years practitioners then are going to look back, or we will, if we're there, maybe, and be like, oh.
Yeah. Cringe.
But yeah, it should be that way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just think it's just an interesting concept of integrating media, especially social media, into your practice, right? And yeah, and I totally had something else I was going to say, but the rum is kicking in, and I can't remember what
Good.
it was.
Good.
I don't remember what it
I
was.
love this. I love these like bubbly conversations. I think that like something that I've seen done before that I think would be really cute is if we actually like made a proper drink and we could like post it, right? Like your dark and
Dark
stormy,
and
is that what it's
stormy.
called? Okay.
Yeah.
Like the dark and stormy, like we could make like a cute thing and we could like post it and be like, drink this with us. And we could
This
all
is what
drink
we're drinking
like,
tonight. You go make one and come and have it
yeah.
with us.
And I think that that's a cute way too in digital witchcraft for us all to kind of be engaging in a similar activity that kind of connects us through these, you know, digital currents. Like, because that's a link. That's a link. That's a tag lock, maybe even. Not quite, maybe, because it's not like a physical item from a person, but it would be a tag lock of our live.
Yeah. Yeah. I get what you're saying. Yeah. It would like pull everybody, it would link us all together.
It'd be fun.
Yeah, I'd be down for that. All right, what's else on the list? What is something you've had to learn the hard way?
Thank you, Red Cat, for the super sticker. Okay. So this will be probably very evident. Give me a second. Hold on.
Sure.
Let me pull out. I got my mini fridge over here. So let me just get round 2 going.
I want a mini fridge.
I have like this cute little mini fridge in my home office. It's really for wine, but I keep all types of crap in there. Not always edible stuff either. Like sometimes other items, like this little oddity that I made out of a garlic container. These are mice, 3 dead mice, like the 3 blind men.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something just kind of cute. But something I learned the hard way. I've been on YouTube since I was in my early 20s, and I'm like 30 now. So I thank every star in the sky and the gods themselves that I did not have social media when I was 15 and 16. Because if I go back and look at my content, and you can look at some of my old content even here on YouTube, and I'm just like, I go back and I watch some of it, and I'm just like, I don't want to delete it because it shows where I've come from. But also too, I'm like, we posted that. Like we said that. So I think learning something the hard way, losing my mother, which is March 25th, coming up this week, it'll be 6 years, I think really catalyzed my entire life because I lost her, you know, when I was in my early 20s. It really changed my life. And it like is one of those moments that made me realize how much I really don't know. And like, it really kind of taught me a lot of things. But one of the big things is when I first got into witchcraft, I was, you know, probably like in high school when I was interested, but I started working at a metaphysical store at 19 years old. I started reading tarot at a metaphysical store at 19. Like, I thought I was the shit. You could not tell me differently. You know what I mean? Like, I'm working around a lot of these women who are double, triple my age. We're doing the same thing. And here I am 19. You know what I mean? Like, I really thought I was doing something. Like, I really did. I remember in high school when I was getting into witchcraft, I kind of rebelled against this idea of religion entirely. And I went out of my way to purposely do everything they tell you not to do, be disrespectful to the dead and blaspheme and do all these things because I'm like, oh, they say I'm gonna summon demons if I do that. Well, let's summon some demons.
Bring it on.
So yeah, that's probably like just how cringe I was. And like, I've learned a lot from being on social media for the time that I have and growing up on social media.
No.
So.
Yeah, see, I didn't have social media till like I mean, I had MySpace, but I honestly can't even remember anything about it. But I remember getting Facebook because I was dating my husband, and it was this big deal. Like, do we get Facebook or do we not get Facebook? Everybody seems to be on Facebook. Maybe we should get Facebook. So we both sat on the couch and signed up at the same time for Facebook. And but I mean, I met my husband when I was 29. So, I didn't have social media at all growing up. There was no internet like, oh my God, I'm sure it would have been atrocious. Like, I think of the shit I was up to when I was
But you
19,
know what?
21.
You know what? The thing is, and for those of you watching who might also have posted some cringy stuff online or who may have grown up online, I would say this, and this is my advice, because I've gotten a lot of negative criticism from other witches, other creators, or other witches online, because like they've seen my content throughout the years, right? And I've changed so much. Like even the witch I was last year and the year before is so different than the witch I am now. And I think that like my kind of feedback to that is you should, if you're really studying the craft and if you're really walking the path of the spiral, I would hope you would be. And that's on Big Purr. Okay. That's on Big Purr. My phone is beeping though that like my battery is dying. So we're going to have to end this live a little bit early. I know, but I can end the live and you and we can still talk. Because I can put my phone on the charger. But yeah, I don't want this to die like it did on another live of mine where I like pushed it to the limit. But this was super fun. And like, Teia, you've got to come back again.
It goes so fast. Like, I'm like, we've been on for like 15 minutes and then it's like, oh my gosh, how can it be an hour? Like,
I know. And we're already at almost an hour now.
Yeah.
And thank you all so much in the chat. Thank you, Redcap, again for the super chat and everyone in the chat contributing. Definitely comment down below and tell Teia that she has to come back. And either we'll do Teia's questions because she always has really great questions, or we'll talk about red flags about magical groups, maybe even not just covenry, just like working magic in groups in general and magical communities in general, and like red flags to look out for or green flags or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll talk about it. I'm going to end this live. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Teia. Yeah. Blessed be.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you.